Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Tank. I'm the Dean of Marketing and Communications here at Muskegon Community College, and I would like to welcome both our online audience and our in-person audience to the fifth in the President's Speaker Series titled Lessons in Leadership. Our series actually will wrap up on May 10th with Ellen Jeffries and Bill Bowerman talking about the Michigan legislature and the appropriations process. The speakers that have been selected for this series were selected by Dr. Nesbary for their impact on the growth of his professional career. As you know, Dr. Nesbary will be retiring in June after a 44-year career here at Muskegon Community College in higher education work, and also previous to that, a lot of policy work and research. In fact, on June 2nd, you are all invited to join us for a celebration honoring Dr. Nesbary here on the main campus. That event will be from 3 until 6 p.m. And in lieu of gifts, we are having some donations available online at muskegoncc.edu/Nesbary to continue the progress of the college in honor of Dr. Nesbary. As we get started today, I just ask if you're in the audience, if you have any noisemakers turned off, your phones or watches, and we will get started. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dale Nesbary.
And online. So I tried to decide exactly how I'm going to introduce Dr. Weatherspoon. Could be a very short intro, or it could be about a half hour. I think I'll make it relatively short. Some of you know Don from his time working in Muskegon Heights as the initial emergency manager. But we were just chatting. I think we met in 1977, something in that neck of the woods, and some of you have heard this story before. I worked with the state Senate Fiscal Agency here in Michigan, and Don Weatherspoon was, besides being a legendary member of the Michigan State University 1965 national championship football squad, he was the, now correct me if I'm wrong, the first African American budget director of a legislative budget office, as far as I know, executive budget office in U.S. history. So even back in those days, you must have been having an impact on the same people that you had on me. I followed Don's career over time, and he's been doing great things since that time. And I'm always amazed that I turn around, I say he's my better looking older brother, right? And he's still going strong doing what he does so well, which is support the needs of students, whether they be in our K-12 environment, higher ed, or anyone who will be willing to benefit from his expertise. So you have his bio. I will turn the microphone over to Dr. Weatherspoon. Thank you, President Nesbary, and it's hard for me to say president since when his days back in Senate Fiscal, he would come to me when I would come into the state and say, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I told him, I don't know what I'm going to do either. So here we are. I got to say I'm proud of Dale, because when I originally was asked to talk about this is what I said. If I knew it was going to turn out this well, I was going to ask him to pay in advance to be. But seriously, it is an honor to be here and to talk about Dale. I believe that by asking me to talk about leadership and mentorship and paying for it, et cetera, it goes a little deeper. Because as a college president, you have to have a wide berth of understanding of people, and particularly of its students. and where students are going to go, etc. So I've been around a long time. And I guess the first lesson I guess I need to admit to you is that there are two things here. He's figured out how to retire. I figured out that I still have to work. Something wrong with this picture. But the idea of paying it forward, it got popular a long time ago with a movie. And as far as I'm concerned, it runs a little deeper than buying somebody coffee or paying their parking toll or something like that. It's about the approach to how you conduct yourself in your career, in your life. It's about investing yourself in people that you meet in your life's path. The biggest thing about this is you don't expect and cannot expect any return on investment. So, in the life of service to people, you move on, you plan to move on, you hope you move on, and in that process, you end up getting people doing things for you and looking and watching what you do, and then making judgments about whether or not they want to invest in you. I'm a living example of having been invested in over the course of a long time. So I'm going to break this into 3 segments. My family, where I started, my college days, and then my career. So I'm the eldest of 9 children. And my mother would say, how you go, so will your brothers and sisters. And that's been basically true. But some of the principles that we were told to live by and actually required was when I turned 11, for example. I lived on a farm. My dad had been raised in the city. He'd grown up through the Depression. He never trusted banks. Things were segregated, etc. So he wanted to be as independent as possible. Well, being independent as possible means that the oldest boy, and I was quite large for my age, had to learn how to farm, had to learn how to do a whole bunch of things in order to survive while he worked in the factory. Out of that grew several responsibilities. 1, you had to plan. 2, you had to work with other people. 3, you had to find equipment that you needed to borrow to do things that you didn't have in your own repertoire of tools, etc. But more importantly, the fruits of our labor produced several things that helped people in our community who were, quote, poorer than us. Now, I want you to know, if you look at me, I've never missed a meal, but we helped a lot of people eat. So with our chickens, our gardens, etc., we fed about 30 families on a daily basis. And when I mean different families of 30 people, we gave them milk, we gave them eggs, we gave them fresh meat, etc. And the ground rules were, you don't ask for anything in return. So with that principle, we had to also look out for senior citizens in our community. And before we could leave the house in terms of going out and run the streets at night, you know, how far can the guy in the company run the streets? But that's neither here nor there. But before we could go out, at least the males in the family were required to go and check on the senior citizens in the community that we knew through our church or through social relationships. And the requirement was ask what they want or what they need, do it, and then leave. And if I get a report otherwise, you're going to be grounded. Well, of course, I'm bigger than my mother. And she said, if you don't think that I can get you, I know where you sleep. So the expectations were already set in my mind long before I left home. The relationship building was already the blueprint for how I figured out how I was going to make things work for myself. The relationships with between my brothers and me still exists very strongly today. And my sisters, I should also, because they're 5, 4, and 5 and 4. So when you learn about team building, you learn about talking to people, you learn about helping people, and then, you know, and all along the way, you know that internally, they know that something good happened to them. Not everybody says thank you. Not everyone says a good word about you, but you know in yourself what you did. You also know that at the time when things get really dark for you, you can turn to those friends and other people who you grew up with for counsel, guidance, etc. And I'm going to come back to that and demonstrate very clearly about this. So the second part of my life had to do with college, and Dale's already alluded to my career as an athlete. So one of the things, before we can talk about my career as an athlete, let's talk about the academic side of my life. I was not prepared to go to a 4-year institution as large as Michigan State. In fact, I was taken into a room with a bunch of probationary people and said, look to your right, look to your left, and say goodbye. I did. Goodbye, goodbye. But I'm going to be here one way or another. Throughout that time, I happened to meet a couple students who took an interest in me for whatever reason, I don't know. And they taught me how to, for example, take multiple choice exams. Not a skill that a lot of kids of color have. It was taught to me in a way that it's kind of like a game. And you have to say to yourself, okay, if the kids who have had a better background academically than me can get this, I had to get it in less than 13 weeks because we were on the term system then. So once I learned that game, I was able to, quote, be my own advisor with my friends, because the athletic department gave me my course schedule, the so-called academic advisor, and it had no relationship to what I wanted to do. Oh, by the way, I was a walk-on. So I got that support, and here's what happened. The first year of athletics, football, freshmen could not play varsity back in the day. So my sophomore year, I made the traveling squad, working 4 jobs, going to school, playing football. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. My first airplane ride, all those things, and still I had my little mentors. They weren't talking to me then. They were kicking my behind. He said, this is what you have to do. This is when you have to do it. And we're going to watch you to make sure you do it. Now, maybe I was more frightened of them in terms of what they were saying to me than I was of who I had to face on the field. Okay? We came within 1 game of going to the Rose Bowl in my sophomore year. Do you know how exciting that is for somebody who came off of a farm, a small community? Unfortunately, President Kennedy was assassinated, not to tell you how really. And we lost a game that was played on Thanksgiving Day. The only game in the history of Michigan State played on Thanksgiving Day. And we lost. So we ended up 3rd in the Big Ten, and the University of Illinois went to the Rose Bowl. One of the people that was on the team that beat us for that honor was Big Buckets and a few other folks. And I'm sure since you're on the west side of the state, you get to Chicago Station, you know exactly what I'm talking about. However, this is something that a bunch of men decided that they were going to put the Eagles aside and do a job based on teamwork, on relationship building, etc. We won the national championship my senior year. We went to the Rose Bowl. All right, we lost 14-12, but that wasn't the point that I was going to get to. My town had 2 things happen. The first thing is that
we took a train from East Lansing to South Bend, Indiana. They had to go through a town called Cassopolis, which is south of here. They stopped that train, and unbeknownst to me, someone had invited all the town and all the schools and my mother and my brothers and sisters out to see the championship team was getting ready to go play against Notre Dame the day before the game. I was asleep on the train when the train stopped. I get a bop upside the head. They said, "Coach, want to see you." I'm thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to play tomorrow." Okay. So I'm in a half daze and walk out on the platform, and there's my mother thinking, "Oh, something must be really up." And then when I woke up, and everything started playing. So that was a wonderful day. But there's more to that. When we went to the Rose Bowl, I said all those things that you built back in the day when I was feeding all those people and working, the town paid for a trip to the Rose Bowl for my mother. And then the ninth child in the family, my baby brother, was 4 months old. So the two of them traveled to Pasadena because the town decided to do that on its own. So the 2 times in less than 2 months where manna from heaven came and you said to yourself, "Wow, what is this?" So further ingrained in my head and in my daily operations, why you had to, quote, work with people, be a part of their lives, and not look for something. So now let's talk about the career. And I'll get to you in a minute, Dale. I'm gonna pay you back in real good order here. So many people misunderstand what professional networking means. It's not that you're in my phone book on my cell phone. It's not that when I need to talk to you or someone that I really, because I made your appointment somewhere else. It's a collection of relationships. And in my life, since I've been around, been lucky enough, I have a collection of relationships that have helped me move along my career path. So, as my responsibilities grew, I also found opportunities to help and advance people with other kinds of responsibilities. So let me talk about Dale. 1977, I didn't have hair, but he did. Right? Okay. He was working for the Senate Fiscal Agency, and his first conversation, as I reflected on it, was something like this. One, he didn't complete the sentence. He just kept saying, "I just don't know what I'm going to do." I said, "Well, don't worry about that." "Well, I'm thinking about getting another degree." I said, "Don't worry about that." When he got through with all the things he said he didn't know what he wanted to do, I said, "Do something and do it now. Stop thinking about it." So he went back to school. So several years passed. I received another call. I'm working in, I think, Adrian or something like that, in president's office, whatever. And he said, "I don't know what I want to take it." Went back to, "I don't know what I want to do." So I think maybe you better take it because you're not going to know what it's going to lead to. And that senior level experience is going to be something that is going to help you no matter what. So he did. And then that morphed into other things, and he ends up a college president. I'm thinking, wow, that's fantastic. I know somebody's important. I know somebody has to be called president. And I just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. So within the last 3 weeks, I happened to be talking to a former student of mine because I did teach at Michigan State part-time for 21 years. It turns out that this young man had crossed paths with Dale. Dale and his family took this young man in back in the 80s. This young man was in my class. about 85, 86, about 89, somewhere in there. He's in a PhD program at the urging of Dr. Nesbary. That young man, now he's advanced in age, but went on to become an excellent person in the field of career tech education. In fact, he's one of the early pioneers in terms of program oversight and understanding all of the rules and regulations of a CTC, and he made a contribution. So when I look at the two guys, basically that young man got a twofer. He got Dale, he got me. Now he's doing the same thing in his consulting role, which, it just springs forward. But I think I want to finish with this. None of us should be limited in our career. The only limitation is your brain. And no matter what your vision is, what you want to do, you can't get there alone. But those relationships that you form along the way that are cemented in your brain and in your daily operations, I guarantee you will come back tenfold, which is an old teaching that I received in the church when I was a kid. The second part of it is you have a responsibility, you have a stewardship requirement to look out for other people as you move through life. And in dealing with kids and young students, you can appreciate that there's no replay in their lives. So if you're going to pay it forward, you got to play it forward, and you got to show the path. You can't be disappointed in those who don't follow your advice, but they certainly will come back and rely on your advice. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to be part of this lecture series and to see Dale in his prime, in his glory, and for you to have put up with him for as many years as you have. I congratulate you and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Weatherspoon. You're not done yet, so come back here. We may have some questions from the audience or some questions for folks online. I have a question. I was honored to work with Dr. Weatherspoon when he was here as the emergency manager for Muskegon Heights Public Schools. And I know that you are still doing that work today. So if you could speak a little about that work and why you continue to do that work.
Well, thank you, Kristen. On April 12th, 2012, I was appointed and showed up in the Muskegon Heights School District. The school district was in such disarray. It had a financial deficit of about $16 million. Its enrollment had declined from about 2,800 to 1,400 in a period of 10 years, previous 10 years. And absenteeism was 50% of the time by both students and staff. $1.6 million, for example, spent on sub-teachers at the time. And the picture was so dismal that if I had the same amount of revenue for 2 years without any students, I still would not be able to live in the school district. So I had to make a decision to close the school district and then recreate it as a charter. And the reason why we recreated it as a charter, it was kind of like the old GM and new GM model. If you remember, the old GM had legacy costs, etc., that forced it to be to go into bankruptcy. Well, that's what happened to the school district. With the practices that were employed by the district at that time, and the disarray on the board, there was not enough, quote, expertise in the district to bring it back in any short order. It was unattractive enough academically, where kids were just being passed on the basis of age. The academic performance was abysmal. And the community said, we still want a school. So we found a way to give them a school. And by putting in a charter, there were the 13 administrators and staff that stayed with me throughout that whole time, and we worked it through in terms of what the charter would look like, and they wrote with me the expectations for the charter company. Subsequently, I was moved on to another school district that was in trouble, and in fact, one of my younger brothers succeeded me as emergency manager. That charter company did two things incorrectly. One, they took the money that was destined for their staff first and didn't pay their staff. The second, they did not provide a quote curriculum that was aligned. So the performance factor did not work. So that company was basically the contract was broken. So the Heights is still struggling and will continue to struggle until there is a greater commitment to saying we really need to work on the future of these children academically, etc. And those kids really deserve that. So I ended up working in 4 school districts as a quasi-emergency manager or considered being a consultant. So I was bi-coastal. So I'd go from here to Highland Park, then I went from Highland Park to Pontiac, and from Pontiac to Benton Harbor. And so over a period of 5 years, I did that. So I retired in 2017, and I thought my life was over and I was going to have a good time, go fishing, whatever. So in December of 21, I'm visiting my grandchildren in Texas. I get a call, said, would you please come? So now I'm the interim superintendent in Romulus. And every time I think about those planes coming in, when I could look from my office and hear coming in, I said, I could be on a plane going to Texas seeing my grandchildren.
So why do you do it?
There were 2 answers. One is my real name is Mikey, breakfast. So I eat any kind of breakfast food. And the other one is I'm really still a sucker for kids. So there's the only way I can explain that. And I really resent when people take advantage of children, exploit children, and put their greed first. That is something that rankles me in, and that goes way back to what someone did for me.
Thank you. Other questions in the room or any online?
So, Dr. Weatherspoon, so we have a room full of people here who haven't seen a transition in the presidency in their institution for next month will be 13 years. So I'm constantly trying to inspire them. Not sure if I'm coming through, doing the best I can. But what words would you have for everyone here about how they can see their way through the process and remain inspired, supportive of the students and all the things that we need as an institution?
You have a charge, no matter what your position is, to say, I see these children, these students, 5 years from now. You see their strengths, and you also see the mistakes they make. Their job is to transition from here to a new place. to be able to take on any challenges that they seek. So the skills that I think that you can impart upon them is those negotiation skills, those management, those self-direction skills, self-confidence skills that they need to be able to say, I can ask hard questions and get them answered. I can step in front of anyone and hold a conversation about my interests and where your interests are and how we can align ourselves. And as far as internal transition is concerned, new leadership means new change, new vision, new priorities, etc. So that means, as far as you're concerned, you still hold true what your priorities are. Then you got to find what that alignment is. So don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Don't wait for someone to say, I'm looking for volunteers for how we can improve on the past 10 years. You go forward with your ideas and see how they're received. But you have to engage in that kind of dialogue and see how you fit, and then how you believe you're going to make the best contribution that you can at that time.
Thank you. I had another question about K-12. So you mentioned Muskegon Heights, and we have Muskegon Public Schools, and there's a lot of core city schools across the state. What do you see as the future? Is the state doing a better job with supporting these schools, and what should be done to help some of these school districts succeed?
Most people say we need more money. And there's a large effort saying you have to have equity education. So if you look at the demographics of the state, half of the state's K-12 population are kids, a non-white majority, okay? And you have to meet those children where they are. And that takes a different kind of training and a different kind of understanding. So you have to expand your knowledge base of what different cultures are and what those children need in terms of the lack of experience or exposure before they can begin to learn. So the example I'll use is if your child comes to school with a vocabulary base of 10,000 words, if my child comes to the same school, that child might be to 500 words. How do we close that gap? The state has given the education community a number of tools to work with. But those tools aren't necessarily aligned and assembled in a way that it meets the child where the child is. That requires work on the part of education institutions, teacher training, and student training with veteran teachers and with coaches. And right now, I think that if I were to wave a magic wand, what would I do? I would put more coaches for teachers and put more training for teachers at their disposal so they can become more adaptable in the classroom.
Thank you. Any other questions here in the room? Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Weatherspoon, for joining us today. Thanks for We do have all 4 of the series are currently up on our website. So if you missed a series in the past, you can go ahead and go onto the Muskegon CC website and check out the 4 previous speakers as well. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, folks.